Goofy. Hello and welcome to the Gold Coats and Guns Hour. Sorry, it's a little wonky getting started this morning. I'm whatever. It is what it is. I am Tom Luongo. It is April 19th, 2022, and yay, isn't the world a lovely place? I don't know about you, but it's just been a crazy couple of freaking weeks. That's all I got to say. And things are a little wonky here technically tonight, and I'm not really sure what's going on. So hopefully everything will, shake itself out and everything will work just fine when we move over to Odyssey in about 15 minutes. I'm waiting for the stream to confirm over there, and once it's done, I will put the link in the chat to the whatever. You're right. How is everybody? How was your weekend? How was your Easter Sunday? Happy Easter and all of that. Happy tax day if you're done with all that. Tonight I want to talk about what I think is, I don't really know what I want to talk about tonight. I'm desperately trying to get things like worked out for this month's newsletter, and literally like 5 minutes ago was downstairs trying to edit a document, and I run upstairs and I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. What am I going to talk about tonight? I think we're going to talk about Europe and and honestly, what I saw this morning this afternoon coming out of the European Union, that they are absolutely convinced that they need to sanction all Russian energy because reasons. But what it comes down to is that I've been saying for weeks, and for those of you who are actually continue to follow me on a regular basis, you know that I've been saying for weeks that I think that this whole war in Ukraine is, it's not cool. It's not good. It's terrible. It's war. War is not anything to ever cheer on in any way, manner, shape, or form, whether it be necessary or otherwise, or whether it feels like it'd be necessary or otherwise. But that in some ways, the war itself and what's happening on the ground in the war in Ukraine is less important than the bigger picture and what the fallout effects of this war have been for all of the major players. And one of the major things on the major players in this obviously is Europe. And Europe, I want to believe that there's it's not a plan, but it really feels like it is, that they're planning to destroy what's left of Europe in order to bring about a complete collapse of the global economy, and then in the hopes that they can then rebuild it from the ground up later on. And of course, talking about what I like to call the Davos crowd. Now, what am I talking about specifically? I'm talking about specifically that they came out today and said they are absolutely next week going to, put a complete ban on all Russian energy imported into the EU. Now, as we discussed here previously a couple of weeks ago, saying, covering the Hungarian elections, that I don't see Viktor Orban coming out and supporting this. And they're going to need, in order to put any more new sanctions on Russia, they're going to need unanimous consent within the European Council in order to get this done. And it is very clear that they have at least one country that is going to say no to this. Austria's come out and said, look, we're 80% dependent upon Russian energy. So is Germany, for lack of a better term. So is for Germany and other countries. I don't know the 80%, but certainly a significant amount. And while it may be preferable in the long run for the European Union to get them wean themselves off of Russian hydrocarbons. I don't actually believe that. It's the idea that they can actually do so in any reasonable length of time and not destroy their people is ludicrous. And we now, what I've started to see in the last 48 hours or 72 hours or so, is a real split within the German political establishment. You've got Olaf Scholz, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, along with Finance Minister Christian Lindner, the former of the Social Democrats, the latter of the Free Democrats, saying we can't do this. And at the same time, we have the Greens, led by Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck and Defense Minister Annalena Baerbock and Foreign Minister, and no, she's the foreign minister, and then there's the defense minister as well. They're all saying the same thing. Oh, no, we have to do this. We have to do this. And it's very clear that there's a definite split within the German political system. And of course, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is the former German defense minister. And of course, she's all on board with this. And she's the one pushing this for as far as, they're going to push. They're going to. So Franco Colo is telling me you're conflating energy and oil. They're only threatening to cut off oil, not energy. Well, they're going to cut off coal, and they're going to cut off oil, which they can't cut off oil. Do you realize how much oil? It doesn't matter. Do you realize how much oil the European Union imports from Russia every year? It's something like 2.5 million barrels a day. There's no capacity for the rest of the world to take this on, even if they wanted to. So there's in the long run, it's not going to make much difference. Okay. Because in the long run, what will happen is the Saudis or the Iranians or somebody else who's willing to trade with the Russians will buy the oil from the Russians and then sell that same oil turn around and sell it to the European Union. So it's all that will happen here is the EU will wind up costing themselves a couple extra dollars a barrel in order to get the very same oil they could just buy from the Russians directly, but give themselves all of their self-righteous moral standing to, so they can pay more money to do this. What they're doing is they're making themselves less competitive in the open market over the long term. So they will just relabel the oil, but the infrastructure is not there for that to happen. Okay, there's a lot of, you got to remember that oil tankers and the entire energy infrastructure is designed around the way things operate right now, and it's going to take months, if not a year, to rejigger all of that. And so Europe is staring at sending oil to an insane level because there's no way for the market to reorganize itself, and that's going to send prices up in the short term, and that's just going to add to Russia's bottom line. So it's insane. There's any number of insane consequences that come from them sanctioning the oil. Now, I did see that that Hungarian foreign minister Peter I cannot pronounce his last name, Peter S., said we're not going to go along with this. So we'll see what happens after that. We'll see if this actually happens. The other thing I want everybody to remind yourself of, and is that what these people are trying to do is force a realignment of the entire energy, the flow of energy around the world, to try and cut the Russians out, and trying to say and basically bribe everybody else, saying, well, look, we won't buy it from the Russians, but we'll buy it from you. We'll buy it from you, Iran. We'll buy it from you, Iraq. We'll buy it from you, Saudi Arabia or UAE or anybody else. And they're trying to break down this and reorganize the everything, and trying to take market share away from the Russians and take a couple of million barrels a day off of their off of their cash flow statement. The reality is one, as I discussed with Alexander Mercouris, the Duran the other day when we were on with Crypto Rich, I said he reminded me that there was a recent phone call initiated by Mohammed bin Salman to Vladimir Putin where they agreed about everything. Well, they agreed that they should organize on OPEC Plus's the framework for the current OPEC Plus quotas are just fine. Thank you very much. They agreed upon things like new defense spending and trade, bilateral trade, and reals and rubles. They talked about all of these things, and so there's no amount of pressure at this point that Europe has been able to apply to anybody and get any response from them. And when you think of it in those terms, well, it just feels like a redux of Brexit all over again. The European Union goes into every negotiation not negotiating, and then at the last moment they go, "Oh, okay, well, we'll cave. We hate you, and we're going to maximally punish you for even thinking about doing anything that we don't want you to do." Blah 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 blah. Well, but show us your whole cards. Well, we got 2-7 offsuit. Hard Brexit. Fuck you. Got gold or rubles? Fuck you. So the other thing is interesting is that the European countries have all repatriated all their sovereign gold. Now, a lot of people in the gold community have commented on Twitter thinking that this is, they were just getting prepared for the day when they would have to pay for Russian gas and oil with gold. And I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I never have. I thought about that. I'm like, no, that's not what they're doing. The repatriation of their gold from City of London and from New York has to do with eventually pledging all of that sovereign gold from all of the individual nations to the ECB, and doing away with as payment for doing away with all of their sovereign debt, in order to officially have all that gold on the ECB's balance sheet to offset any fall in the price of European sovereign debt, which is rapidly rising in yield right now. So the price is dropping like a rock, and there we go. So yeah, repatriation means they don't trust you anymore. It's not even that. It's that they're about ready to actually betray their own people by selling off their sovereign gold to the ECB. So it's really, really, it's really clear that that's what's going on. That's where we are. That's where they're going next, because they don't have any other options. They have run out of real estate. The euro is trading now down below $1.08. The German 10-year Bund is trading at a 5-year high. It's about ready to pass 1%. It's a lot. It's moving very, very rapidly, along with in line with U.S. debt. But it's fine. The U.S. can handle this. I firmly believe the U.S. can handle this as long as we don't engage in any more ridiculous spending and we don't pass Biden's budget. None of this stuff seems to be getting passed. So I don't know. So Jeff Greenlee got my 2-7 offsuit reference. Yeah, it is. It's a Texas Holdem thing. It's the worst hand in Texas Holdem. If you don't know what 2-7 offsuit means, it's what that means. It's literally the worst pair of hole cards you could possibly have. You can't have a worse hand than 2-7 unpaired, not of different suits. So, all right. I'm going to be moving over to Odyssey in a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue going from there. I don't know what we're going to do tonight. I'll probably open it up to questions pretty quickly and comments and whatnot, and we'll just go from there. I don't have a lot of prepared remarks tonight, but I wanted to make it clear that the state of markets right now is that the fallout from the war so far in Russia is to transfer political stress is already blowing back from all of the sanctions and everything, blowing back onto Europe. and onto the United States. I wrote an article last week, and it was regime changes in the air, and I was quoting not just Pakistan, where we did have regime change, but also the potential for the French elections to go badly this weekend, for the cabal, for Joe Biden to be overthrown. All of these things are coming home to roost all at the same time. And we're looking at very important governments on the verge of collapse if the people would just organize and do so. All right, this is the thing, and this is the key, and this is actually how we mostly avoid World War III, or at least a further escalation of any kind of war stance, because they can't blame this on Putin. Putin's willing to sell everybody oil, and he's willing to sell everybody gas. He's willing to sell everybody aluminum, coal, fertilizers, grains, and everything else, if they would treat Russia with something other than abject disdain and derision. And it doesn't matter at this point whether he invaded another sovereign country or not, or any of that stuff. None of that fucking matters. You don't have to like Russia. You don't have to like Putin. You don't have to like what they've done in Ukraine. I don't like what they've done in Ukraine. I don't like what we did in Ukraine. I don't like what any of this has been done. But that doesn't matter. Because the truth of the matter is that the people who fomented this war in the first place, the people who put Russia in a position to give them no other option than to think that all they had was to go to war, had every other option available to them and chose the route that they have. And therefore, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck who's right and who's fucking wrong at the end of the day. Everybody chose war. And now you get to deal with the consequences of it. And unfortunately, we all have to deal with the consequences of it, because we're the ones who are going to pay at the pump. We're the ones who are going to not have the food. And we're the ones who are not going to plant crops. We're the ones whose businesses are going to be destroyed. We're the ones who are going to suffer. Meanwhile, the people who are the architects of all this are not. And it doesn't matter what side of the equation we're talking about here. But from my read over the last 10 years worth of geopolitics, it's very clear that there are plenty of people out there who were trying to avoid a war at all costs. Well, not at all costs. They were willing to avoid a war up to a point. And a very specific group of people said, you know what? Nope, we want war. All right, well, if you want a war, I'll give you a war. That's what I've got. And that's where we are today. And now the consequences are, we've got thousands of dead Ukrainians, thousands of dead Russians, thousands of dead civilians on both sides. Well, on both sides. Really on both sides, if you consider the Donbass having been an independent states for the last 8 years, which I do. So I don't consider that. I don't give a shit what the UN says, because the UN doesn't even recognize Crimea. Like, we're at the point now where the political borders don't fucking matter. None of this shit matters. Okay? None of these niceties matter. Like it or not. It is what it is. We had an opportunity to choose something other than war. They chose war. And now it's going to be fought out. It's going to be fought on the battlefield. And it's going to be fought in the boardrooms, and it's going to be fought in the financial markets. And everyone is going to suffer for it. And everyone's going to suffer because some people don't know when to walk off the fucking stage. All right, I'm out for now. I will be moving over to Odyssey one more time with Feeling. There's the link in the chat box on the right. Those of you who are watching the replay of this, if you don't know how to, can't see that, turn chat replay on. All right. I'll see you over on Odyssey. And if you can't do that, search for me on Odyssey. It's not really that hard. I'll be over there in about 2, maybe 3 minutes. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon.